Student loan payments are bad, but you might have multiple missed payments when your student loans were in forbearance. Please make it make sense. Or you might have multiple missed payments when your student loans got forgiven. That sounds crazy, huh? Or you just have multiple missed payments on your student loans and you just trying to figure out how to get them removed. Hey, you're at the right place at the right time, and my lawyer is going to talk about how we can knock the things off and possibly get paid. So let's get into it.
If a client got their student loan forgiven by Biden's plan, but the company still put a 30-day late on a credit report, is that a violation of the FCRA?
Maybe. And that's a famous lawyer answer, or it depends. That's a real famous one, is responding it depends. It depends on when the late occurred. So if the late occurred prior to the settlement or prior to when it was forgiven, it sucks, but they can go back and put bad information in the past in. If they put a missed payment or late payment after it was forgiven, well, that's of course wrong, because you can't owe a payment and then miss a payment after it has been forgiven. So it is, and I hate this rule because a lot of companies will do this. After you resolve with them, you settle it or they forgive it, they do a final accounting, on their side. And sometimes that adds information to your credit report because that final accounting is a final summary of the whole account. And so if you missed a payment 4 years ago, it may only pop up now when you finally close it because they do a final review and they submit the final round of information back. So it could be the case that this person had their student loan forgiven. That student loan company did the final reconciliation of that account, and that made an old missed payment pop up. Unfortunately, if it's within 7 years and that payment was legitimately missed, there's nothing we can really do about that. But if they forgive a debt and then mark you late afterwards, that's of course wrong. We do that case all the time. We talked earlier with Lisa, if, you settle with an account, they can't mark you late for the next owed payment, but that happens too. So really it depends. So we just need to know a little bit more about that particular question. If it was a legitimate missed 30, 60, 90, all the way up to 180 in the past, if it's accurate, there's not much we can do unless it's older than 7 years or they marked you late after they forgive it. That's a big problem.
Okay. Yeah, I think this guy said he was in forbearance and they still marked him late.
So that's different. That could be a good case. So when you're in forbearance, you don't owe money. That's what a forbearance agreement is. So if we can prove in writing the period of that forbearance, we might be able to help with that case.
Okay. And that's a good segue to the next question. Dave, you got something before I ask?
These credit bureaus aren't your friends. These debt collectors aren't your friends. They all your enemies. And if you're tired of sending letter after letter saying verify, we on a mission to sue these motherfuckers. You know what I'm talking about. So if you want your debt permanently removed from your credit report and get paid for every violation, you already know. Hit me up in the comments. Let's talk.
What are some ways that we can prove our violations?
Okay. So glad you asked that question. And it's going to be a good thing for me to talk about generally. One important thing to understand is there is a big difference between what a lawyer can do in litigation and what is successful in credit reporting and credit disputing world and credit repair. So in a court of law, which we're going to be suing in mostly federal court, we have to prove ironclad. So I'm so glad that question got asked, which means don't throw away any mail. If we're working with you, don't throw away mail from debt collectors, don't throw away mail from creditors, landlords, what have you. The credit reporting agencies, if you get mail from them, because by the way, if you hire an attorney or hire a credit repair, group, and they dispute for you, the law still says the results come back to the consumer directly. So even though I may send a letter on a consumer's behalf, the consumer is going to get the result. So the best way to prove these violations is to always keep the evidence. Let's talk about other types of violations, right? So let's say it's a phone call and a debt collector is rude and aggressive and makes threats or swears at you. Well, two things. One is that call is going to be recorded on their end. I can guarantee it. The other thing is in your state, which check your state, you may have the right to record them. For example, in Florida is what's called a two-way recording state. So I can't record someone unless I tell them. But everyone knows you get that phone call and it says this call may be monitored for quality assurance or training purposes. That is a notice to you that they may record, so you automatically have the right to record in the state of Florida. You don't even have to ask or tell them because they have already told you, hey, I might be recording you. You can record them. So that's another important thing. Don't throw out mail. Don't delete voicemails. Don't delete your call history, in your call log, because if we're going to sue debt collectors, we have to prove what they did. We either need the letter that they shouldn't have sent you, that phone call that's going to be recorded. If someone's rude to you on the phone, just take notes, and write a little date next to it. Because in the court, if I say, hey, my client took contemporaneous handwritten notes, you can see it on this notepad. It's dated that day at the same time as the phone call. Who are they going to believe? They're going to believe the consumer with these notes, or are they going to believe the debt collector saying, oh, I never threatened that. Oh, and by the way, we lost the phone recording somehow, which always happens. But how we prove these things is through evidence. And that evidence is don't throw anything out, keep notes, don't delete voicemails, especially the mail. And then prove the violations for the credit reporting. That really depends on the nature of the dispute. If you're saying I didn't pay late and they marked me late, well, show me your clear check. Show me the payment that you submitted through the online portal on the 29th day. Sometimes these companies get greedy, right? You have 30 days to generally pay until they mark you late. Well, companies have been sued for send the payment on the 29th day. Well, guess what? It goes to the bottom of their pile. So by the time they get to, it's been 32 days. They can't do that, right? So we would have to prove, hey, I postmarked the payment this date and so on and so forth. But, if it's ID theft, we have to prove you didn't take out these loans. If it's I settled this account, we have to prove you paid that settlement. The proof is always going to be in the pudding, but it's just keep the evidence, don't throw anything out, keep good notes, and we'll be golden. Great question. Right. Back when I was talking to Robin about the ways you can dispute, it has to be inaccurate, incomplete, or too old generally. Well, if they're reporting inconsistently, it has to be one of them, at least one of them have to be inaccurate, right? So one of the things we love to do on the lawyer side, and we absolutely litigate this. I sue credit bureaus for this all the time, and we serve them with federal lawsuits, Dave, because they're reporting inconsistently. If Experian is reporting an open date of this month and TransUnion and Equifax are reporting it something different, we know for 100% certainty someone is reporting inaccurately because it can't both be true, if it's different months. Same thing, if they're reporting a different balance. I don't care if a balance is off by $1 on a different report. Someone has broken the law because they have reported inaccurate information. So inconsistent equals inaccurate, always, because something has to be wrong. And then what we do is we send a letter and we say, okay, Capital One, LVNB, whoever it is, here's what's being reported inconsistently between the bureaus. Fix it. What that means is they have to either make them all match, and that has to still be accurate, or they have to delete it. But they almost always just verify. Absolutely, that's a great case. Love that case. Because it's so easy. I get to say, what are they going to do when I hold up two pieces of paper with different information? You don't get to tell one story to one person and another story to another. So that's a great question. Inconsistency equals inaccuracy.
Ooh, that's easy. And around.
Now, let me also give a small caveat. And this is something I want to make clear to everyone too. Not every piece of wrong information or inaccuracy will end up in litigation. There's still an analysis that has to go through what's called materiality. That's a legal term. It's always in cases. It's in a bunch of case law. What that means is it has to be important enough. The open date, that's important because your open date will often determine how long something can be reported, right? But, if how they have those payment grids on some of the reports, the 60 months, if it shows no data in one of those months, probably not going to sue on that, because there's 60 months there. And if it shows your on-time payments otherwise, that's wrong. You can dispute it. They should fix it. But if you come to me and say, hey, Aaron, they're showing a no data on this 1 month of 60 and the other 59 are right, I'm going to say, you know what, that's annoying, but that's not worthy of a lawsuit. But open date, they're reporting the date of last payment differently, the date of first delinquency differently, the past due balance, any of the big indicators, like the big important things, how long something's going to be deleted. If there's inconsistency among any of that information, it equals inaccuracy, equals lawsuit.
Hold up. Do you want to learn how to get an unfair advantage against the credit bureaus or the debt collectors? Watch that video right there.